On this week's show, we're going to take a look at eBay and Etsy's Q3 results, along with some changes that are about to happen at both of those companies. What is up, Galaxians? Welcome to another episode of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and I am your host. We've got a little bit of reselling news to cover today, including Q3 results from both eBay and Etsy. Some always interesting tidbits in there, along with some changes that are occurring either on those sites or with the leadership and organization of those sites. So let's get right to it.
News updates.
We are going to start over at eBay, where they dropped their Q3 results. This article and all of these today will be from Value Added Resource. There will be links in the show notes and the video descriptions down below. eBay Q3 2025 earnings, GMV growth overshadowed by uncertain long-term trends and weak Q4 outlook. That all sounds vaguely familiar. This has been a trend at eBay for some time. These results, to be fair, this time around are actually a little bit better than what we're accustomed to seeing, though we'll get into whether those results maybe are legitimate or appear a bit illusory. The Q3 earnings showed impressive GMV growth, but questions about those long-term trends and weaker than expected outlook for Q4 holiday shopping drag the share price down. So despite a good quarter, the share price did drop. We'll get into that as well. Revenue of $2.8 billion, which was up 9% on an as reported basis. So I believe last quarter it was 1 or 2%. So this represents, at least on paper, a very good number for eBay. Gross merchandise volume, GMV, as they like to call it, $20.1 billion, which was up 10% on an as reported basis, which is also good. Advertising revenue, the company's total advertising offerings, generated $525 million in revenue in the third quarter, representing 2.6% of their gross merchandise volume. That is a number that we have talked about over the last, year plus, as they have doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on things like promoted listings. That has become an ever bigger piece of their GMV and, of course, of their profitability. First-party advertising products on the eBay platform delivered $496 million in revenue in the third quarter, which was up a whopping 25% compared to the previous year. Capital returns, of course, the company used all that money to repurchase $625 million of its common stock, or approximately 7 million shares in the quarter. Total active buyers reported at 134 million, which represents minor year-over-year growth of just 1%, but was flat when compared to the previous quarter. It's also important to note that despite the minor year-over-year growth, this is now the, wait for it, 14th consecutive quarter where eBay has had less active buyers than they had back in Q1 of 2018. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this chart where you've got the going back to Q1 2018, and then you've got some nice growth. Then you've got the pandemic, which nobody really expects you to continue at those levels because that was a black swan event, if you will. But then the rapid decline of those numbers, and pretty much been flatlined since, call it Q3 of 2022. A little bit of growth, but nothing substantial, and have not returned to those 2018 levels yet. Once again, as has been the case for numerous quarters, now years, to be fair, eBay declined to provide specific active seller figures, which were last reported in 2021 at 17 million. Those enthusiast buyers that eBay is always so happy to talk about, those with at least 6 purchase days and at least $800 spent in the last 12 months, and or buyers who also sell, stuck still at 16 million, which is where they've been since Q4 of 2022. Again, despite eBay engaging in significant discounting aimed at specifically trying to goose that stat. Their CEO did mention on the conference call that they have not seen what he called churn in that category. So those buyers are sticking around and they're consistent, but they just haven't been able to really develop any more of them, which, to be fair, those are pretty big numbers. That's a lot of purchases on the site for a lot of money, and not everybody's going to do that, particularly as eBay kind of loses market share in some of those categories to other sites like Whatnot, for instance. So on the GMV growth, eBay defines gross merchandise volume, in case you had forgotten, as the total value of all paid transactions between users on our marketplace platforms during the applicable period, inclusive of shipping fees and taxes. The taxes one is the important one here, because since they count that total number of transactions paid through the platform, that means it does include tariffs and duties for sales where those costs are included and paid by the buyer at checkout rather than paid separately after the purchase through the carrier at the time of delivery. So this number, while on paper, the GMV being up 10%, looks like a really big win for eBay. The question remains, is that a real number? Obviously, eBay is collecting fees on that number, so that's all good for them in terms of their profitability. But those numbers, that bit of volume, much like with a price increase in the price of shipping, is not reflective of anything that eBay has actually done to increase their number. This is strictly, or at least mostly, the result of these tariffs on items coming into the U.S. So there was some skepticism. Clearly, there's some skepticism here as well, but with analysts about how legitimate this growth actually was. For example, the article continues, eBay's global shipping program in the UK displays prices to buyers, which are inclusive of those tariffs and fees, which caused GSP prices to the US to skyrocket earlier in the year, leading eBay, in fact, to actually temporarily pause the service in May while they made adjustments to account for those tariffs. So lots going on there. This is a pretty lengthy article. I'm not going to go into all the details. It will again be linked in the show notes and the video description below if you'd like to read more. But I did want to talk a little bit about promoted listings. I did a special episode last week about some changes coming to promoted listings. We talked about kind of at the start of this segment how those advertising products have become an ever bigger piece of eBay's GMV and profitability. They again reported total advertising revenue $525 million, 2.6% increase, first-party ads, all of the various cost per click, cost per sale, store and offsite promoted listing products total delivered $496 million in revenue, again, up 23%, while eBay continues to intentionally reduce third-party ads, which brought in only $7 million in revenue. Nice little chart here, again, if you're watching on YouTube, and you can see the fairly steady growth of those programs over the last couple of years. According to their CEO, about 1.2 billion of the 2.4 billion listings on the platform were promoted during Q3, with over 4.4 million sellers adopting at least one promoted listing ad product during the quarter. Now, when we went over last week the listing quality report in the categories that I sell in, significantly less than 50% of those listings in that report were noted as being promoted. So at least in my categories, I'm well under what he seems to be indicating here, because he's essentially saying half of all the listings in the quarter were promoted. And in the case, again, of my report, let me know in the comments below what your report looked like. Way less, sometimes significantly less than half of those products were actually being promoted. So interesting that those reports, again, at least in my merchandise categories, don't seem to jive. The math ain't mathin'. It's difficult to determine, again, exactly how to interpret that last stat, since eBay has not disclosed, again, the total number of active sellers, but it does at least show a steady increase this year, with Q1 reporting 3.7 million and Q2 reporting 4.1 million, respective, for the number of sellers using at least one ad product. That will be an interesting number to watch as we get into probably Q2 of next year. Remember, the new promoted listing program actually goes into effect on, I believe it's January 13th of next year. A lot of sellers have said that they are either going to drop promoted listings altogether or at least reduce the amount they're promoting. So it'll be interesting to see if this upward trajectory can continue, or if this is something that they do some damage to. They did say in their earnings call that they were pleased with the results overseas, that essentially saying that sellers had adapted to the new fee structure, and that, as I conjectured in the last episode that we talked about, that net, it was a positive for eBay, even though sellers had adapted. And by that, I'm sure he meant either reduce the number of listings or the amount of percentage that they were promoting by. So this is going to be fascinating to watch. Again, there's a whole bunch more stuff here, but the last thing I want to hit is that the eBay stock share price fell by about 9%. After the call, reflecting investor disappointment with weaker than expected guidance for Q4 and concerns that GMV growth, as I mentioned, may not be as durable or as legitimate as they would like everyone to believe. So let me know in the comments what you think of eBay's quarterly results. Again, on the surface, fairly good, but definitely some stuff underneath the surface that causes one to have some caution. They did make a couple of other changes this week, in addition to the big one that we talked about with the promoted listing change. eBay has quietly paused the AI video creation for social media sharing and reconsiders some seller marketing tools. You may remember back in the spring, they introduced this new AI social sharing tool. I did a quick video on it showing how it worked, which was frankly quite clunky. It didn't give you a lot of options. There were a lot of questions about who this was actually for and who was actually going to use it. And as it turns out, it appears that not many people ultimately did. eBay has quietly paused the AI video creation tool for social media sharing as they reevaluate those marketing tools. The generative AI feature was introduced back in May, helping sellers turn images from their listings into YouTube and TikTok ready videos for social sharing. At least that was the idea. The videos were pretty mediocre. As you saw, if you watched mine or any of the others that were out there, early feedback from sellers, like mine, was disappointment in limitations of the tool, no ability to edit text overlays, really no ability to edit backgrounds. It was what you saw was what you got. You could do the same thing yourself in Canva or any number of other services if you were so inclined to do so. If this had worked like Canva, for instance, and been a tool available and accessible right within eBay, it would have been fantastic. But unfortunately, it was a very limited version of that type of thing, and it just didn't work and it didn't get adopted. There was also frustration, of course, with receiving errors or having video creation take an agonizingly long 3 minutes to produce just a 15-second video clip. Let me know in the comments down below if you ever tried it, what you thought of it, and if you're sad that it's gone. I, for one, I did it, I think, twice. I did it once for that demo video. I tried it one other time. It errored out 3 times in 4 attempts and then did take nearly 5 minutes to create one video. And I made the decision that if I was going to do that sort of thing, again, I would just do it in Canva where I knew it was going to work. I could make the edits that I wanted to make. I knew it would be done quickly and it would look good. And this, unfortunately, did none of those things. eBay is also making some changes, or at least testing some changes on the desktop site, moving ads, item specifics, and descriptions placements in the item page. Let me know again in the comments if this is something you've seen. I very rarely use desktop, other than when I'm like shooting a video for a tutorial or trying to do something very specific that can only be done on desktop. I almost never search for an item on desktop, so I haven't seen these results because they show differently on mobile, but eBay appears to be testing rearranging the order of how ad modules, seller-provided descriptions, and item specifics are displayed to buyers on item pages. The standard view item page experience has typically displayed an eBay Live banner and or promoted stores banner at the top, then a row of ads. Before the images, the seller information panel, buy it now, add to cart, make offer, or add to watch list buttons. Then as the buyer continued to scroll down the page, they will see 2 more rows of ads, then the item specifics, the item description, the About Seller page, a promoted stores ad, which is someone else's, of course, product ratings and reviews, and then a continuous wall of ad modules until the end of the page, which was almost an infinite loop of ads. If you just continued to scroll, it would just continue to fill in more and more ads. So some buyers have said they are now seeing the order of the information on that view item page having changed, moving the description up while still, of course, leaving plenty of room for ads. Again, remember, it's a big piece of their business and of their growth, so they're not going to get rid of them, but they are at least trying to move them around a bit. In the test version, there may still be a banner for eBay Live or promoted stores at the top, but Liz, when she looked over at Value Added Resource, was not seeing that next row of ads that is usually above the images and the title. That, to me, is a win for sellers. I don't want another seller's products or multiple other sellers' products showing up kind of in the middle of my listing. So this, in theory, at least should be a good thing. If you continue down the page, there's only one more row of ads before it shows the seller provided description. Again, this is a win. Eliminating all of those other ads in our listings should be to our benefit. I don't know necessarily that it's to eBay's benefit, but to us as individual sellers, this is absolutely, I prefer that they don't not show any competitors' ads on my actual listings. I'll get on my soapbox here a little bit. I don't care, frankly, when I'm just on the first search results page. I don't care if a quarter of those are ads, if half of those are ads, if the first 5 are ads. That none of that really bothers me all that much. But once I, as a buyer, and especially from the seller of a seller's perspective, have clicked on an item listing that I am particularly interested in, I don't want to see all these other. I've chosen this one. I want to see the information about this one. This at least appears to be a step in that direction. The second row of ads that was previously above the description has now been moved below it, and then the item specifics now appear below that row of ads. So let me know again in the comments if you're on desktop pretty regularly. Have you seen this test? After the item specific page, it then shows the about seller, seller feedback, and then the rest of the page again is just more ads. So again, no problem for me with the ads at the bottom. If I've scrolled all the way past the information in the listing that I'm trying to see, and then the rest of the thing is full of ads, hey, more power to you. It's those ads before you even start to see my pictures, before you read my description. Those are the ones that are problematic for me. The only real seller complaint that this article highlights is that this test appears to be happening, of course, in Q4, which is a bad time for any changes to be occurring. Anything that disrupts a normal user flow, a change like this may in fact do that. This probably isn't the best time to be doing it, but to be fair, this is, at least on the surface, again, an improvement. Last bit of news from eBay. Discount fashion retailer and eBay mega seller BHFO is closing up shop amidst economic challenges. This is kind of a cautionary tale. Sellers talk about sales being down. Other sellers talk about always wanting to scale up, this infinite growth. And at some point, if that infinite growth does not come, bad things can happen, which appears to be the case here. Discount fashion retailer BHFO, once one of eBay's top fashion sellers, is closing up shop, with the CEO, Stacy Sefton, citing economic pressures for the end of a 23-year-old business. The company, founded by her and her husband, John, in their basement back in 2003, started on eBay, and by 2014, they were one of the largest fashion sellers on the platform. They had moved into a 232,000 square foot distribution and warehouse facility. I'm sure they had a significant number of employees as well. The business continued to grow both on eBay, where they racked up over 11 million items sold, and of course on their own website. They were even featured in the eBay Main Street blog just over a year ago. Unfortunately, this appears to be a tipping point this year. The company, local news outlet Corridor Business Journal, reports they laid off 32 employees in May and recently filed an Iowa worker adjustment and retraining notification notice showing another 46 employees will be laid off effective November 26th, with Sefton confirming the business is shutting down. She went on to say, "It is with heavy heart that we are announcing the closure of BHFO," she said in an emailed statement to the Corridor Business Journal. Economic pressures like inflation affecting overall operating and shipping costs, interest rates, and other challenges have impacted our decision to continue business online. We want to express our deepest gratitude to our employees, customers, and vendors for your loyalty. This past 23 years, it has been an incredible journey, and we are very proud of what our team has accomplished. The article notes the website is still active, but all items have been set to sold out, and the banner has been posted on the main page, which simply says items are not available to purchase. Similarly, the eBay page does not explicitly mention that the company is going out of business, but their entire inventory appears to have been removed except for 2 auctions, which were already active, which they appear to be allowing to run their course. It is, of course, unknown what the potential impact of the closure will have on eBay. Losing one mega seller might take inventory off the marketplace temporarily, but fashion, The article notes is an extremely competitive and saturated category on the platform, and other sellers may quickly move in to fill the gap. That would be my expectation. I'm not a fashion shopper or seller. I don't know how unique the stuff was that this particular vendor had, assuming it was just the same kind of run-of-the-mill stuff, clothing and handbags and that sort of thing that everyone else is offering. I don't know that I would expect that eBay will see a noticeable drop off, because buyers who are looking for those particular items will just purchase them from someone else. If anything, it obviously removes a lot of competitive pressure from sellers who are already there and may allow for a little bit better margins, as you're now not competing against someone who was selling millions of items over there. So I feel bad for the company, of course, for all the employees who were laid off. And again, it's a bit of a cautionary tale about managing your expectations, managing your business, but being aware of the economic environment, which we talk about a lot on this show. Infinite growth is just not realistic, and you need to think ahead about where your business might be in 6 months or a year. And if you don't do that, this unfortunately can be the result. My thoughts go out to everybody who's getting laid off right before the holidays. Never a good time. Moving on over to Etsy, they made a big announcement ahead of their Q3 results. Their CEO, Josh Silverman, has announced his exit ahead of those earnings report. Etsy has announced that CEO Josh Silverman will be stepping down at the end of the year, with current President and Chief Growth Officer Kruti Patel Goyal taking the helm to lead the marketplace beginning in 2026. I don't know that this will be met with a lot of sadness. I don't get the impression that Mr. Silverman was super popular with the users at Etsy, but nonetheless, that's what's going on. This executive switch up was revealed in a company press release ahead of those earnings reports. Etsy, which operates a two-sided online marketplace that connects millions of passionate and creative buyers and sellers around the world, today announced a leadership transition plan. Etsy's current president and chief growth officer, Kruti Patel Goyal, will become chief executive officer and will join Etsy's board of directors effective January 1st, 2026. This appointment comes as Josh Silverman has decided to step down as CEO effective December 31st, 2025. To provide continuity through the transition, Silverman is expected to serve as executive chair through December 31st of next year. Fred Wilson, who currently serves as the chair of Etsy's board and has done so since 2017, will step down, but he, of course, will continue to serve on the board, because why wouldn't you? That's a good gig. Silverman said, for his part, after over 8 years as Etsy's CEO, I've decided that this is the right time for me to hand over the leadership baton to the next generation. It has been an honor to lead Etsy and help foster creativity and self-expression in a world increasingly shaped by automation. Some would point out that Etsy has been responsible for a lot of that automation themselves, with a lot of AI bots and administration and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, he continues that Kruti is a fabulously talented and is the right leader to guide the business forward. In addition to her tremendous success as CEO of Depop, which remember Etsy owns, over the past year, Kruti has has evolved and led Etsy's strategic growth initiatives, which has led to improving top-line performance. She'll bring deep experience, a strong understanding of our customers, and a clear, forward-looking vision for Etsy's future as our next CEO. I remain confident in Etsy's continued growth, he concluded, not only because of our unique marketplace, but because of the talented people behind it. His tenure at the company has seen mixed results, from pandemic highs to recent years' struggles with declining gross merchandise sales, which we're about to get into, and active buyers, activist investor Elliott Management taking a large stake in the company, tariff turmoil, and failure of his House of Brands strategy, which led to the sell-off of subsidiaries Elo7, which I believe was from Brazil, and most recently Reverb. There was another executive announcement as well. Someone else leaving. Patel Goyal, for her part, will receive a base salary of $700,000 a year and will receive a promotion equity award with a fair value of, wait for it, $16 million. according to the SEC filing. Congratulations. Kruti Patel Goyal says she is honored and excited to step into the CEO role at Etsy at such a pivotal time, adding as customer needs continue to evolve, Etsy will too, but we'll do it in a way that stays true to who we are, leaning into what makes us different. Human connection, our sellers' creativity, and a distinctly personal shopping experience. I believe we have been on the right track this year in our efforts to return our core marketplace to GMS growth and deliver value to our community and to our shareholders. We'll see how that works out because the results they reported, not great. Q3, while Depop continues its hot streak, the main Etsy marketplace continues to struggle. The highlights that were reported performance for the company GMS was $2.4 billion, down 2.4% year over year. GMS transacted on the Etsy app, however, did grow 5% and now represents about 46% of their total GMS. So they have been on a big push. We've talked about it here on the show pretty regularly to get people on their app. That growth continues to move in what they feel is the right direction, and they're now rapidly approaching half of all of their transactions are taking place on their mobile app. So I guess that's good for them. Active sellers, which they, unlike eBay, do report, totaled 5.5 million, a 10.9% year over year decrease, but up modestly on a sequential basis, consistent with the expected impact of the seller setup fee that they implemented in April of 2024. You may remember we talked about that in an effort to weed out scammers, counterfeiters, and the like. They implemented a shop setup fee, which I believe is $30. And it has obviously had a negative impact on the number of new sellers that are coming on board, though I'm sure they make the argument that those sellers that they are onboarding are actual legitimate businesses and people who are trying to sell and do the right things. So it's probably in the end, it's a win. It does show how huge the problem was with scammers and counterfeiters prior to them making that change. So anyway, the percentage of total active sellers with a sale did increase year over year in the third quarter. So the sellers who are there are, in fact, actually at least selling one thing a piece. Active buyers, 86.6 million, which was also down 5% year over year. They really track buyers. They also reactivated 6.6 million buyers in the quarter, which was a 3.8% rather increase from the number of buyers reactivated in the prior year. During the quarter, they acquired 4.8 million new buyers, and our trailing 12-month count of habitual buyers was 6 million at quarter end. So they, like I said, they really drill down on their buyers. They're new buyers, habitual buyers, buyers who have left the site and been reactivated that have come back. So they really, at least statistically, have a grasp on what their buyer base looks like. Gross merchandise sales per active buyer on a trailing 12-month basis was $121, which was down 1.6% year over year. It did improve a little bit to the prior quarter, and the year over year decline has moderated. So buyers are still buying a little bit less than they did previously, but the rate of decline has kind of stalled out. So things are leveling off, which would indicate that they may be on the right path here. Some performance highlights for Depop, which continues to just crush it. Gross merchandise sales, $292 million, up 39.4% year over year, an acceleration from even the prior quarter. New user growth and improvements to buyer conversion were primarily responsible for 59% year over year gross merchandise sales growth in the US. Australia also saw strong momentum driven by more than 100% year over year growth in new user signups, supported by increased investments in paid marketing activity. Depop active sellers totaled 3 million, a 40.8% increase year over year. Active buyers were up 38.8% again. So really, really strong performance at Depop. I don't sell there, and even I recommended it to someone the other day. I was out to dinner, and I overheard someone sitting next to me at the bar talking about wanting to sell clothing, and they were not feeling Poshmark because of the fees, and I suggested that they maybe look into Depop, which they were not even aware of for some reason. So good on them. Hopefully that growth continues, and hopefully with the new CEO having come from Depop, which obviously has experienced this success, whatever the magic she was working over there at Depop, she can bring over to Etsy. Last bit of news here. Etsy is testing a new top buyer badge, nudging sellers to prioritize customer service for what they call high spenders. Etsy is testing this top buyer badge feature, highlighting higher spending shoppers on the site and encouraging sellers to give them priority customer service. The new badge has been spotted in recent days by sellers when reading their messages, with Etsy encouraging them to prioritize responding to these top buyers in the U.S., while of course also reminding them that they're still expected to respond quickly to all buyers. Remember, Etsy has their star seller program, and one of the requirements there is that you respond to all seller or all potential buyer first messages within like 24 hours. So I don't get a lot of messages on Etsy. If you're a big seller and you get a lot of messages, I suppose having a flag on it, a badge, that this one is from a big spender maybe would be useful. But with all the emphasis on the star seller program and already rapid response, this strikes me as a bit of a nothing burger. You can let me know in the comments what you think of that. Sellers say when they receive the messages being from a top buyer, there's a pop-up which explains what the new badge means. It's only visible to you. We're testing this badge to help you prioritize messages from the top 15% of U.S. buyers by spend, so not by transaction count, but by spend, how much money they've spent in the last 12 months. Keep in mind your message response rate is based on your replies to first messages from all buyers, not just top buyers. So again, kind of a reminder about the star seller program. Opinions about the test, as you might imagine, were mixed in the Etsy community forums, with some sellers saying they appreciate the feature and see it as a way to differentiate themselves and keep shoppers who are more likely to make a purchase engaged, while others cautioned that because the metric goes by spend rather than by the number of sales, these buyers may only make a few high-value purchases a year, so being a top buyer does not necessarily mean they're any more likely to buy than anyone else. And it also doesn't mean necessarily that they're a good buyer in the sense of not leaving unwanted poor feedback or lots of problems. So let me know what you think of any of that going on over at Etsy. That's going to put a wrap on this week's news. Some stuff over at eBay, some stuff over at Etsy. As always, I always appreciate hearing your thoughts on it. So let me know in the comments down below, good or bad, what you think of any of this. As always, thank you so much for coming by, spending a little bit of your time listening to me ramble and talk about all this stuff. I, as always, very much appreciate it. If you got something out of this episode, do me a favor before you leave and hit that thumbs up button. Let the YouTube algorithm know that this was a good use of both of our times. Until next time, my friends, it's time to sell. Thanks, guys. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.